Spicy segment here at Dolphins Today. I am Nic Rohloff. We are doing the top head coach targets / candidates that the Miami Dolphins could be looking at if they moved on from Mike McDaniel. It is not a guarantee they do that. I would actually say it is more likely that Mike McDaniel is back as Dolphins head coach next season than it is not. But I did think it would be interesting to talk about some of the top 5 names that could be in the conversation to replace Mike McDaniel. But before we even get to that, I got to ask you this, and you guys need to make the call. Should the Dolphins fire Mike McDaniel? Type Y for yes, type N for no. It's today's pinned comment, and we put out a community post earlier in the week asking this question. 58% people said yes, but I want to see the people on this video and your thoughts. Well, my thoughts are very simple. It's yes. And I made this video on Monday. If you did not watch, make sure you are subscribed and you go watch that show, because I laid out very specifically in about 13 or 14 minutes why I think Mike McDaniel has to be fired. But we're going to do a little bit of a Sparks Notes version here for people who did not watch that video, because he is simply not good enough against top competition. Mike McDaniel, after the loss against the Texans in Week 15 last Sunday, is now 3-15 against teams with a winning record. He simply cannot coach versus good teams and good coaches on the other sideline when he gets matched up against them. And it's very obvious when you look at the offensive disparities between good teams and bad teams. And when you look at the last 10 games for the Miami Dolphins offensively against winning teams, it is horrible, horrible, horrible. The only 2 games where the offense performed was in Week 9 against the Bills and Week 8 against the Cardinals, where they scored 27 points in each of those 2 games. But we now know that the Bills' defense is absolutely horrific, and the Cardinals' defense is very, very bad. So it's not like you're going up against good units on that end of the football. But 12 points against the Texans in a must-win game, 17 against the Packers in a must-win, like, these are terrible. And when you look back at the end of last season in 2023, must-win games to try to clinch the division against the Bills in Week 18 and the Ravens in Week 17. You lost 56-19 to Baltimore, and you lost 21-14 against the Bills, and then laid an egg, as we all know, in the wild card game against the Chiefs, where you lost 26-7. The Dolphins simply need a culture shift. The fun, agile, explosive, shifty offense, it was fun for 2 years. But it's simple as this, in my opinion. The Dolphins' offense and all that motion and agility and finesse, it's been figured out, and they need a culture shift, not only to become a more physical team on the offensive side of the football field, but on the defensive side of the field. So we no longer have these late season collapses. We no longer have these no-shows in important games in late November and December when the most meaningful football is played. The team needs to toughen up, which is why the number 1 person on my list to replace Mike McDaniel, if they go that route, is none other than the former Tennessee Titans head coach, Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, to me, is the best head coach candidate out there, regardless of what Miami needs, but in just absolute general. And you could talk about Ben Johnson from the Lions, who's the offensive coordinator. We will talk about him on today's show. But Vrabel is the number 1 guy. And you want to talk about a culture shift. Going from Mike McDaniel to Mike Vrabel would be a full 180. And it would be a 180 for the better. And I know a lot of people will point to, well, hey, remember when Brian Flores was head coach for the Dolphins and they got rid of him? Isn't Vrabel very similar to that? He is. Not as hardcore as Brian Flores, but he is pushing you in the right direction. Because I would rather have a coach like Brian Flores than Mike McDaniel. I think it's important to have player coaches. I think it's important to have the like of your players because they'll want to play for you. And you shouldn't just put a lot of negative hate on them, like Flores did with Tua. I think Vrabel's that perfect happy medium. He can relate to the players. He was a player. He can be a player's coach, but he's also respected and a hard-nosed guy enough to have a more tough football team. I mean, you see his resume. He has a winning record in his career. He's 2-3 in the postseason, including an upset win against the New England Patriots in a wildcard game and an upset win against the Baltimore Ravens. He almost got them to the Super Bowl. They were competing with the Kansas City Chiefs on the road in an AFC Championship game. And he won Coach of the Year in 2021 when they grabbed the number 1 overall seed. Now, they did lose in the postseason in their first game that season against the Bengals, which was a disappointment. But he has an outstanding resume. And to me, you might ask, well, why did he get fired from Tennessee? Well, I think he got the raw end of the stick here because, to me, Mike Vrabel got blamed a lot for bad decisions made by that front office. They did not invest at wide receiver. They traded A.J. Brown to draft Treylon Burks. That was the end of that offense. The offense went from here to here once you traded A.J. Brown and added Treylon Burks. So if you keep A.J. Brown in Tennessee, well, the band might still be together for the Titans with Henry, Brown, Tannehill, Vrabel. But that's another aspect. Ryan Tannehill was cast out by Miami. They went with Tua Tagovailoa as their next future quarterback in the draft, which was the right decision. Tannehill was clearly not taking you anywhere. But Mike Vrabel coached a team that had Tannehill at the quarterback playing in an AFC Championship game that went on the road and won 2 playoff games. So Vrabel can take an average quarterback in the NFL and get them to play above average football and a winning brand of football when it matters most. He's done it in the past, which is why I think he would be the number 1 guy for the Miami Dolphins, because I think he could have Tua do it, and I think he could really whip the culture in Miami into shape and get them into a better spot long term. Vrabel, my number 1 guy. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because if something happens in terms of coaching, we will have you covered. Hit that sub button today because we're still dropping daily content on the Miami Dolphins. Number 2 guy, which we mentioned, Ben Johnson. To me, these two are the top 2 head coach candidates, and it really isn't close. Belichick maybe could have been in the mix, but ever since he took the North Carolina job, it seems like these 2 guys are the top coach candidates no matter what. And he is an absolutely brilliant offensive mind. I mean, listen, I know some people may kind of get scared of hearing that because they're like, well, Mike McDaniel was a brilliant offensive mind, and that's who we just hired and who we're getting rid of. But Ben Johnson does it in a way different way. Ben Johnson schemes up a lot more of a stable offense. He does not do shotgun, pistol, a million different motions and predicate on speed. What is the key in Detroit for their offensive success? Well, it's their ability to run the football with a 2-headed monster of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and then utilize that into play-action passing for Jared Goff, hit Amon-Ra St. Brown over the middle of the field, hit Sam Laporta over the middle of the field, utilize Jamison Williams' speed on the outside, and then utilize Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery out of the backfield in the passing game. To me, he has constructed an offense that is every team's dream. And you see the numbers over the last 2 seasons in 2023 and 2024. Now, ironically enough, you see a lot of high numbers for the Lions in 2023. The team that they were behind in a lot of those metrics were the Miami Dolphins, but it is well documented that the Dolphins had the number 1 offense statistically last season. Obviously not the case this year. Well, this season for the Lions, it has been more of the same. Number 1 scoring team, number 2 in yards, number 2 in passing yards per game, and top 10 in rushing yards per game. He has built a sustained and elite offense in Detroit with a quarterback in Jared Goff that is not elite. He is not a top 5, top 6 transcendent offensive talent. He has built that offense in the trenches with a good offensive line, a stable running game, and a good passing scheme that plays on his quarterback strength of Jared Goff of throwing over the middle of the field in the play-action game. The only concern I would have on hiring Ben Johnson is if that he is just another Mike McDaniel, someone who is really good at scripting plays and having an offensive scheme. Can he be a leader of men? Can he lead an entire locker room of 53 players on both sides of the football? I think that remains to be seen. That is why you have head coaching interviews. But to me, his offense is much more sustainable than Mike McDaniel's is, which is why I would be okay firing Mike McDaniel and going with Ben Johnson if he wanted to be your head coach, because he will be in hot demand and he will have his pick of the litter of the open jobs in the NFL. 3 more coaches to get to, but I do want to tell you about our sponsor, which is Game Time, the #1 app to get tickets to live events, whether it's comedy shows, concerts, theaters, sporting events. And during the holiday season, be the legend. Be the person who gives the best gift that is a ticket to a live event. I did that. I got tickets to Timberwolves Mavericks Christmas Day basketball from me and my parents. They're going to look at me and be like, Nick, this is awesome. And you know what else is awesome? How easy it is to buy tickets on Game Time. Because with features like Game Time Picks that filters out the fluff to show the incredible deals on great seats, it's so easy to purchase tickets. Like, filters out the fluff. You don't have to waste time searching through tickets. They have a lowest price guaranteed. If you find a ticket on a different service that is lower and the same exact seat, same exact row, section, whole 9 yards, they will credit you 110% of the difference. You also get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. There's no better way to get tickets than with Game Time. Download the app today. Use code CHATSPORTS when signing up to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. First purchase only. But use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. Shout out to Game Time. What time is it? It's game time. Number 3 on my list, it's someone that I don't think is getting enough buzz as a potential head coach this cycle. It's actually Jesse Minter, the Los Angeles Chargers defensive coordinator. I'm really high on him. And I think he is not going to get a job this offseason. I would be shocked if he did. But if the Dolphins moved on from Mike McDaniel and missed out on Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson, my pick would be Jesse Minter. He, to me, is everything that the Dolphins could want if you do not get Mike Vrabel or Ben Johnson. When you look at his career path over the last 5 stops, he was a Ravens assistant defensively in the secondary from 2017 to 2020. Then went to Vanderbilt to become their defensive coordinator before joining the other Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, at Michigan as his defensive coordinator in 2022 and 2023, and then followed him to the NFL to be the Chargers defensive coordinator this season. He has been with the Harbaughs for the last 8 years, besides 1 year when he was the Vanderbilt defensive coordinator. And there's the reason why I like that. This guy knows what it takes to lead a locker room. Is there any debate on the Harbaughs, John or Jim, being able to lead a locker room, run a tight program, tight ship, and win in tough conditions? I don't think there's a single person alive that would disagree with me on that. They might think they aren't as good as a coach as others, but I think everyone can agree they know how to have a sustained winning culture. John Harbaugh has been doing it in Baltimore for decades. Jim Harbaugh did it in San Francisco, did it at Michigan, and is now having the Chargers on the brink of the postseason in his first year as their head coach. Minter has been with them for the last 7 years. He knows how to handle tough conditions. He knows how to bring a locker room together, win in tough spots. Think about it. The Michigan cheating scandal last year. They still won a natty when that was all going on. Minter was there for that. Harbaugh was there for that. Minter knows how to get through that and have the outside noise get blocked out. To me, he would be a great hire if you didn't get Vrabel or Ben Johnson, because to me, he knows what it takes to go into battle late in the season in important games and perform, deliver, and get a win. If Mike McDaniel got fired, who would be your top replacement for him in Miami? Would it be one of the 3 names we've talked about, or would it be someone else? Let me know down in the comment section. A 4th name we're going to talk about is Joe Brady. He is the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator right now. And I got to be honest, Brady's 4th on my list. It's a tear break, though. Here's my thing. I would want Vrabel 1, Ben Johnson 2, Minter 3. But if you knew for an absolute fact you could not get one of those 3, I would rather have Mike McDaniel than any of the other names we were going to talk about. It's a clear break. I would like Minter to replace him. I would like Ben Johnson to replace him. I'd like Vrabel. I don't think Joe Brady would be an upgrade over Mike McDaniel. I don't think the last two names would be an upgrade either. But let's talk about Joe Brady because he is a hot name right now. He's been with the Bills since 2022, was the quarterback coach, became the interim Bills offensive coordinator when they let go of Ken Dorsey last season, and then has been the full-time OC this year, and he's been absolutely fantastic. He was also the Panthers offensive coordinator in 2020 to 21, and the reason why he got that job is because he was with LSU in 2019. Yes, that's the infamous Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson team. He was the pass game coordinator and wide receiver coach. Well, so he coached up Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and led Joe Burrow to a record-setting year in a Heisman and a national championship. Yeah, that's pretty good. But I will say this. Call it a gut feeling. There's no real science behind it. There's no real statistics to back it up. But sometimes you just get a gut feeling. I think everyone could go to this. And right now, my gut feeling is that if Joe Brady was hired as a head coach in the NFL, it'd be a disaster. I literally can't tell you a reason. But every journalist, everybody will tell you they get a random gut feeling on a topic or a subject at one point in their life. And I'm telling you, I have one on Joe Brady not being a good coach in the NFL as a head coach. Maybe I'm wrong. If he was hired as a Dolphins head coach, I'd hope to be wrong. But I just feel like it would be a disaster. But the resume does stick out, and it's the reason why he's top 5 on the list. Last name we'll talk about here is Aaron Glenn, another Detroit Lions coordinator. He is number 5 on the list. He is the defensive coordinator. He's intriguing. Why is he intriguing? Well, it's because if you actually look statistically at the Lions defense, it isn't very good. Like, they're average to below average in almost every statistic over the past 2 seasons. Now, a lot can be said about the injuries that they've endured, and this season, I feel horrible for the Lions. I do, because to me, they were set up to easily make a run to the Super Bowl in the NFC, but they have had more injuries to their defense than I have ever seen. I know the Dolphins had a ton of injuries last year to the defense. I've never seen anything like what's happening in Detroit. But there are raving reviews around the league about Aaron Glenn and his ability to lead a locker room and a defense. Then I think you'd have to give a look at him for sure. That's why he's number 5 on the list. He's not a top name for me. And I would rather probably keep Mike McDaniel than fire him and hire Aaron Glenn. But he is a name to monitor if you are looking at a replacement for Mike McDaniel. But let me name one more guy before we get out of here. A sneaky name. Someone on the roster. Someone on the organization. And your current defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver. And if you are changing it up, I think it's probably in the best interest of everyone to just kind of clean house. But I like what Anthony Weaver's done this season. I think he's been good as the defensive coordinator for the most part. And he's been talked about as someone that the players really like playing for. And they like his leadership ability. And Tom Pelissero had an article about potential head coach candidates in the future seasons to come. And Anthony Weaver was on the list as a top 10 guy. So it's clear NFL circles believe his time may come over the next 2 or 3 seasons as a head coach guy if he shows that he can be a good coordinator. So if the Dolphins did end up moving on from McDaniel, it wouldn't shock me if Anthony Weaver got a hard look from Stephen Ross. I'd probably rather still go outside the building, but he is a name to monitor. And if the Dolphins suck next season again and Mike McDaniel collapses down the stretch and he gets fired next season, then Anthony Weaver could be in line to be the replacement if he is having another good year as a defensive coordinator. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Dolphins Today. I know it was an intriguing one and a lot of hypotheticals, a lot of ifs, and this segment may remain moot as Mike McDaniel likely will probably just keep his job in the offseason. But I thought it would be fun to talk about here since a lot of us are talking about moving on from McDaniel. This is why you subscribe, though, because we're going to break down everything around the Miami Dolphins. So hit that sub button.